Okay, excellent. Hello, Neil.
Yeah, hello, how you going?
I'm good. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
You obviously did a very good job of getting the word out in WA because there's quite a few people calling in from WA.
Oh, that's good. I almost missed it because it didn't go into my calendar.
All right. I guess it's probably a really good time for you guys as well. It's what, 9 o'clock?
Yeah, 9's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good. We've got Greg now. That's good. Hi. We'll just give it a minute and then we'll get started. So I'm recording this so that we can put this on our Berries Australia website and also our VSGA YouTube channel when we're done. So hopefully everyone's okay with that. And yeah, so, well.
Can you hear me, Angela?
I can hear you, Greg. Yep.
Cool.
Perfect. So what we might do, people are still sort of coming in. I didn't do a waiting room so people can just join as they get there. So if anyone who's not sort of speaking puts their microphone on mute would be good. And then yeah, so I just wanted to welcome everyone to this. This is the first of a series of webinars and meetings and grower events that we're going to run as part of a grower technology update grant that the VSGA received from Agrifutures. This is following on from a grant that we received a couple of years ago, and this is just to continue to help growers adopt some of the new technologies that are available. So the VSGA has got this grant, but we're making the webinars available to berry growers all over the place, just so that we can get as much engagement as possible. This morning, someone's if you can put yourself on mute, maybe whoever's got noises going on. So this morning we're starting off with Rose Elphick-Darling from Deakin University, who's going to speak about the work that they've been doing with growers and industry on traceability. And then there'll be some time for questions for Rose after that. And then we've got Greg Calvert from FreshChain, who presented to us a couple of years ago with our initial grant and is going to give a bit of a recap and then a follow on with some practical ways and solutions for implementing traceability. And then we'll have some more time at the end for questions, which you can either put your hand up and speak or type things into the chat box. So what I'm going to do is introduce Rose now, who's going to share her screen and do her presentation. And hopefully technology will all work.
If not, Angela has the presentation.
Yeah.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rose. I work with Deakin University's Centre for Regional and Rural Futures, which is in the science faculty at Deakin. And we've been working in the area of traceability for some years and see it shows. But I think I did my first traceability project in about 2005. So it ages you, definitely. So without further ado, I'll go into what we're currently doing and how this might be able to help you within your businesses. I come from a background in supply chain and logistics, and then moved into the traceability space over time. And for the last 4 years now, have been working with a food traceability laboratory. We call it a laboratory, but it's really just a group of passionate individuals, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So there we are. That's what I'd like to speak to you about, and then questions and answers. As we go through, if there is something that you don't understand, raise it then. I'm happy to stop and explain. Okie doke. Well, I guess one of the significant things, whoops, I'm just trying to minimize. Okay. Around strawberries is this challenge of the short lifespan, and about half of that time is spent in transit, which for the product itself is a massive challenge. You know how long you've got, and so it's constantly tick-tock on senescence once that berry's removed, and that, I believe, is one of the greatest challenges for traceability with highly perishable products. The other challenge, which is going to become increasingly relevant to your businesses, is the need to trace back to individual grow sites, particularly those who are also doing packing for others or distribution for others or wholesaling. We're talking about a need now to not just demonstrate that you know which business it came from, but individual grow sites. You're not the only industry facing precisely this challenge. Of course, we've got leafy greens and melons that are going through the same process. One of the biggest issues that we've found for growers is the issue of return on investment. It's like, oh, not another thing, you know? And are we doing this for the supermarkets? They're going to mop up that benefit that we're creating. How long does it take to get a return on any investment we might make in this? And for the majority of berry growers, consumption is national. It's not an export product yet to a significant level. So you keep asking yourself, oh gosh, you know, this is a domestic product, and particularly if you're in the Yarra Valley, as many of our growers are, you know, it's a couple of hours away to your destination markets, and you're thinking, oh, is this worth it? Really? You know, what's the problem? The other challenge that we've found is the, and Greg, cover your shell pink ears. It's around, where do I start? You know, there are many solution providers who approach growers and say to them, we have a solution for you, well before the business has worked out what they need and who they might need it for. So we talk to businesses about starting from a business imperative, not from a technical imperative. And there are wonderful solution providers out there to help you, and Greg's one of them. But first of all, you really need to understand what the benefits are, what the costs are, and what do you need to actually do so you're as efficient as you can be. The increasing regulation, everyone's experiencing it. It isn't only you. I think consumers have that much stronger demand for more information, and they don't believe the hype. I think a great deal of greenwashing and other claims have really cruelled the pitch a bit for a lot of growers, and they don't believe unless you can prove. So this is what is very common now. The other thing that's a challenge with strawberries is the multiple sales channels. I mean, I don't know about all of you and who you're selling through, but you might sell to more than one retailer. You might sell at a local market. You might be doing farm gate sales, combination of those. You might be selling direct to a manufacturer who's creating a particular product. So that complicates things where you've got multiple sales channels. And we've found that many growers do. So that's the challenge of this task, I guess. What's the advantage? Increased food safety. Well, you might say that's a bit of a no-brainer, but if it was a no-brainer, why are we having amendments to the growing and processing standards? I looked back at the food safety record and I couldn't find very many incidents, which is a credit to you guys and the work that you do. I've got 2020, Uncle Toby's had those strawberry roll-ups. They found metal fragments. Well, that was a manufacturing issue, not a grower's issue. 2019, well, that was an infamous year for the strawberry industry, wasn't it? The old needle tampering, which, you know, created absolute havoc. 2017, we've got Hep A in imported and frozen berries. 2015, the same thing. 2016, you did your Victorian strawberry report, and that found that about 2/3 of strawberry growers had some form of traceability, that 2/3 had labelled their product and issued con notes for their shipments, which is a great traceability tool. Only 8 out of the sample kept daily records, and 1/3 could trace back to a grow block. So this is what I meant about the sort of challenges. But food safety wise, you can all give yourselves a damn good pat on the back, well deserved. So what are other things that are worthwhile with traceability? Product recall. It is amazing how traceability and that investment can narrow down and speed up product recall. Now, we have proven that, and at the moment we're gathering every bit of evidence from across the globe that allows us to assess that claim of benefit. Greater accountability and consumer trust, I've already mentioned that. The issue around improved quality control is around keeping records. This is not just temperature records, in fact, records now from a machine learning, and you take a photo of the fruit and so on, and that will give you some parameters around quality control. But it also allows, for products with a short lifespan, you to be able to make changes to shelf displays, use bys, etc. It's a great benefit in terms of not wasting fruit. And we have a project that's afoot at the moment, looking at in-transit interventions in berry supply chains to be able to redirect the fruit. And with our need to avert waste, this is a really great intervention that could save a huge amount of waste in the industry. So wherever you can see your inventory, where it is, and be able to track it, means that you can make these sort of interventions that save money and cut down the amount of debits that come against your unit price achieved. Risk mitigation, it can support climate-related disclosures. It can monitor transitions with your ESG reporting, those of you who are moving into that, and projects to mitigate climate change. Traceability is a really great way of gathering that data. Increased operational efficiency, reduced wastage. Well, I think we've sort of covered that to some extent. Okay, so what's Deakin doing? Bit of a plug. We are working with industry. I mentioned about the formation of the Food Traceability Lab. Let's see who's on it, who you might know. Bianca Cairns from Port Innovation. She's part of the lab. The Food and Grocery Council, Duncan Craig is on it. We have Perfection Fresh, 2 representatives from Perfection Fresh have been on over time. So we know that they're in the big league, but there are people there representing the fresh produce industry. So it's a cross-disciplinary group, and it's part of Future Food Deakin, which looks at health, sustainability, environmentally sound production, supply and consumption. We've got a group that looks at trends in taste, nutrient density, all sorts of aspects in relation to food supply chains. And we're part of that. What does our Food Traceability Lab do? They run a program that provides industry guidance and support at the supply chain level of traceability, not just what you do within your business, but external traceability. What information do you receive from other businesses and pass forward to your partners in the supply chain that can carry right through to consumers, be used by regulators, that achieves this line of sight? We call it a line of sight along the product journey. So what can I see? It's a little bit like you take a piece of information out of your enterprise system. We don't need to know everything. We might just need to know 1 or 2 things that are passed forward that allow a picture to be built up of what's gone on with this product the whole way along the supply chain. So, you know, at the moment with 1 up, 1 down traceability, the next person, maybe the next business, 2 down or 3 down in the supply chain, might need some data, but you didn't pass that on to your direct customer. So this is what we mean. It's like putting a bit of information into an envelope to carry it forward along with the journey of the product. So what we're trying to do is to look at how to standardise data formats so that systems can talk to each other without it costing a fortune to be integrating all the time. So trying to do this in the cheapest and most efficient way possible. And I'm sure Greg will have a lot more to say about that. Okay, what are the kinds of things that we do with industry? This will give you a bit of a sense of what other industries that have been involved in these 4 years have been able to do. We've created a series of food traceability guides. There are 3 available at the moment. There's a 4th one about to pop. One's generic, so you could apply that and winkle out what's relevant to strawberries from that generic guide. That was the first one that we did, so it covers all agri-food products, so you can avoid the animal ones, but grab hold of the hort relevant ones. We do industry demonstrations. We never produce a guide without testing it in real Australian conditions. And we think this is really important. This stuff's not just some kind of theoretical research. This is real applied research in real Australian supply chains. And, you know, all the things that go on in a business. You know, you might be doing a SAP implementation or doing a new ERP or a new transport management system or whatever. These are the real circumstances. We did a couple of these through COVID, and we had to cope with all of the closures of distribution centres, retailers trying to cope with supply over COVID. So these are fair dinkum demonstrations within industry of how this can be achieved. We have developed with GS1 Australia and other standards providers a traceability data framework that says, okay, if this is something you want to trace, here's what how the data needs to be formatted so that systems can talk to each other. We're just about to deliver our first e-learning resource that you can use for yourselves and staff. It's called Demystifying Traceability, and it helps people to understand what some of these terms that are used and, you know, what the hell's with blockchain? What's this for? What's that for? So you can access it online, and it's free. All of this stuff's free. It's been paid for by industry to make it available industry-wide. We do evaluations on where the benefits to businesses are of this supply chain level traceability. Our aim is for scalable, affordable, open source and interoperable traceability. We reckon that's the least cost, most efficient and most effective way to achieve this capability across Australia. Now, this is what you're up for. So if it's 30 months since this is gazetted, which was towards the end of last year, 30 months. So you've got a while before you have to deliver this. This is your the amendment to the food safety standards that's specific for berries. So you are going to have to trace back to the site where the berries were grown or received. So this applies to processors, pack houses, etc. Who was the business you received the berries from and who they were supplied to. So that's the old one up, one down. But I guess this business of the grow site is a really important addition for a number of fresh produce categories, and particularly the ones that apply to you. I'm assuming that you've all been across this, seeing as I imagine you're a pretty switched on group of people. All right, so I'm going to show you a bit to do with these guides, so you get a bit of a sense of what sort of information we can supply you with, because this is really important. So the one I'm going to focus on is organic produce, because it's the nearest one to the product that you're supplying. So I know that not all of you are organic growers, but this is just to show you what's in these guides. Okay, so this is a flash graphic of the sort of thing that's in there. This is the production side, and it covers a range of activities from inputs, planning, putting in place your HACCP plan, your biosecurity plan, various inputs, FERT, your water, any chemicals that are used, the planting, and the the growth stage, harvest activities, and then post-harvest activities. Oh, that was sort of doing my head in a bit, that. Let's have a look here. What else do the guides cover? This is standardizing formats for data. So this will show you how to use GS1 mainly standards for domestic. There's some other standards that apply to data, but this shows you things like what the labels need to look like, what various data formats you'll need to follow for packaging. Yeah, and for really simple things like the day. How do you, I asked a group of apple and pear growers a while ago how they would write today's date, and we got 6 different ways to write it. What we're talking about is standardizing the one way to write the date so that that data automatically goes through. With systems currently, a lot of this happens in the middle of the night. As you know, it's automated. So you're not there to intervene, to correct. These systems talk to each other. So that's the reason we need to all be talking the same language. So this helps your solution provider to talk the same language as the person who's running the next system. So these are all the activities that are covered in a guide: production, packaging, processing, distribution, transport, food service, import and export, and end consumer information. So there's a fair bit in these guides. I know one of the sponsors, Woolworths, holds one of the guides up, and they told me that they use it as a doorstop in their office. So they're pretty detailed. The other area that we have in the guides is data sharing and cybersecurity protection. And no matter how small your business is, you do not want to be the weakest link in your supply chain. So this helps you and your anyone who's responsible. And I know that in a lot of businesses, the owner is the CTO and the CIO and the CFO and the general manager, but getting your head across how to mitigate security concerns is incredibly important. The food industry has been targeted in Australia by cyber criminals, and it's been found to be highly vulnerable. So if you look at a number of the companies that have been hit, quite a few of them are agri-food businesses. Now, we use a framework for approaching traceability, which was developed in 2014-15 by the Global Food Traceability Centre, and it's called the CTE KDE framework. What the hell's that? Well, CTEs are called critical tracking events. They're the really important events that you need to monitor and extract information at that point. And so that means things like where there's a change of custody, handovers of any sort within the supply chain. And don't forget, if you have a look across the bottom here, it covers lots of different things that might happen to the product before it gets consumed. So critical tracking events, lock that one away, because this is the kind of global framework for how to do traceability. Then for each of those critical tracking events, we have key data elements, KDEs. You'll hear this kind of, if you go to anything on traceability, you'll hear this sort of, these acronyms being used. So that is just a piece of data, a field of data that's needed to underpin a critical tracking event to make sure there's enough information to be able to trace this product back and track it forward. So this is individual fields of data. And like we say, it's the who, what, where, when, and why of that event. So there's no big mystery about this stuff. It's really the nuts and bolts of traceability. So in the organic production guide, as I mentioned, that's the closest one to strawberry growing that we could find. Establishment, and in their case, organic certification for those who are organic growers. Establishment means things like getting a global location number or some way of identifying your entity, your suppliers, your customers, so that they can be traced. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And this is all of your licensing and food standards requirements. Have you got your food handling plans in place in your packing facilities, all the things you have to do to set up, basically. The preparation of the grow sites, planting, farm inputs, harvesting, post-harvest handling, and we'll have some examples here. On-farm storage, waste and byproducts, and the dispatch of products. And we'll show you a little more detail on that. Then there's the next, which is your transport to processing. So if you're supplying to a pack house that's doing processing and pack out and distribution for you, then that's another module. So depending on where you sit in the supply chain, this is growers and producers. Next would be those processors and those transport suppliers. So let's go down and have a look at what a CTE and a KDE looks like. Here's a harvest one. So the CTE is product selected and harvest time when it meets the specifications for your buyers. You get to this critical point in tracking, and this is where things like discarded product and product that actually goes over to the cool store. You can start to do things like weight and yield quantities. So these are the kinds of data that we're looking for traceability. Now, when I said you're going to take individual pieces of information out of your system and share them to your supply chain, then we are talking about only a couple of things at the bottom. See on the bottom of this slide, it says key data elements to be shared to a traceability platform. The two things that, or the two areas, is harvest date, the ID of the product, the batch, and the quantity, and the location. So they're the data elements to share. However, up above, you've got a range of other pieces of information that you're going to want to hold on to. You don't necessarily share them beyond the business, but you keep them there in case you're called on. So this traceability at a supply chain level doesn't mean to say you're sharing the guts of your business. You're actually sharing some items that need to go with the product. Otherwise, you keep them in your farm database or your records, your farm records. So let's look at another one where you're about to ship the berries off. You prepare your shipping documentation. Now, an advanced shipping notice, I don't know how many of you are using them, but geez, it makes your life easier. Where you're just sending them straight down to a DC, that say the Melbourne Fresh Centre, or say you're sending them direct to retail, then it may be just a con note that you're using. And that's the kind of information that consignor, the consignee, there we go, the address that you're sending it to, and the quantity, the transport unit, whether it's a carton, a pallet, mass and weight, which you need anyway on your con note. So this is the who, what, when, where and why here, and these are the key data elements below. So here's where you're actually dispatching and the product's leaving the farm. What do you need? Product dispatched. What was it? The ID of the product, the batch number, a serial number. Now, that allows you to not just call every punnet of berries by the same code number or SKU number for the supermarket. You can serialize it so that you can identify a particular batch by that serial number, the quantity, the ID of the pallet, the SSCC on the pallet, the con note number or the packing number, date and time, and where you dispatched from and to. So it's not as gruesome as you think it may be. You're probably already doing 80% of this. For retail, there we're looking at the GS1 standards that retail requires, and you can click through in these parts of the guide to actually look at how the data needs to be configured. Okay, I mentioned that we go out and do industry case studies. This was one that we did with a company in Tasmania. I don't know whether any of you have drunk Willie Smith cider, but it's pretty good. They provide fresh apples, organic apples in this case, to supermarkets across Australia, and they're based down in southern Tasmania. So this guide talks about their experience, the DC, the retailer, the transport, the two freight legs that they use, how their supply chain looks, and how they were able to create traceability within their supply chain. And can I tell you that this grower had its packhouse machinery, great stuff, top of the line, but product coming in from a group of growers that were being processed at their facility, it's a bin tag, right? Stuck on a box, a bin of apples that comes in. And if that tag falls off, you're in trouble. They're just starting to map their orchards, right? So this is not some highly digitized fancy company. Ordinary growers bringing in product, tipping it from the bins into the grading and sorting and washing and packing. Nothing fancy about this, but they were able to achieve full traceability through to the store. So it is doable, and for them it was pretty affordable too. So there's a couple of the guides I would recommend you have a look at, and that's the sort of stuff that's in there. It's a great pity we don't have a berry guide. I've talked to Rachel McKenzie about this, but probably the organic one is pretty close in terms of the product type, and that's the generic guide there. So that's the website. Go in there. There's all sorts of resources for you to have a look at and to download. So questions. I'll stop sharing now so I can actually see you.
So we've got a couple of minutes for questions for Rose. And then Rose, if you're able to stick around till the end, we might have some more time for questions at the end. But if anyone has any questions, just quickly now for Rose. Anyone?
I just freaked you all out.
No, that was really great, Rose. I just had a couple of questions. So can growers actually get advice directly from your traceability lab?
Yes. There's a contact information, or you can just shoot an email or actually just ring up, and we can get information from any of the members of the lab or our own team within Deakin or our network, which is pretty extensive. So we should be able to point you in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Are there any none in the chat? Can't even find the chat on my screen. Massive fail. No, we're all good.
I've got a quick one. And Angela, I guess when you look at products and problems that have gone through, let's just say melons, rock melons a few years ago, where people were, people died, and from a food safety issue. Now, obviously they had, ways of tracking that back. Now, the thing that I'm just going to turn my video on as well. The thing that we do at our property is...
Neil, your video has made your voice cut out.
Yeah, you might need to turn your video off, Neil, because we can't.
Now we've seen your handsome face.
Yeah, that's better.
So what I was, I guess, trying to label every punnet, because we're a strawberry grower, so labeling every punnet can be problematic. We certainly do all those other steps on the con notes, and we know where they are per day. So if we have a date dispatch on our box, we know where they are. But when they get to the retail level, it's a bit harder to find. But the reality is that it will all go in the bin, and it won't matter. We'll be destroyed until we work out what the problem is, and we will be able to find that on our own farm because we have those records. I'm just not following the requirement, and it's a lot of work, and I'm not seeing the real benefit of the other next step of tracking every individual item of food, what that's going home with the consumer, to the 5,000 or whatever meterage of space where they were produced. I don't get that, because when it comes to an economic and food safety issue, you'll be shut down. You won't be able to send anything to anybody. So do you understand the question?
I do. And Neil, you're spot on. I guess the question is, have you got enough information to be able to limit the damage? You know, a bit like the eggs and the salmonella and the needles situation, where there's a bit of making up of contract batches by growers in the same vicinity. You know, with the eggs, I don't know whether you're familiar with that scare, but what happened was a group of growers shared the balance of supplying. You know, with eggs, it's a bit like seasonality. The chooks, you know, drop production at certain times of the year. And so if you've got extra orders, in order to make up the orders, they were sharing eggs across farms. But only one of them was stamping the eggs. And so guess who got blamed for it? The one that had the stamps on the eggs. And it wasn't that company that had the salmonella in their flock, in their layers. It was one of the farms that were in that sort of cluster of suppliers who were sharing between each other. So, and again, with the needle tampering, that was a group of growers, so they couldn't really isolate it to one particular grow area or grower. So it's a dilemma. I understand with the price you get back for a punnet, you're scratching your head and wondering, what the hell, you know? Can it be done a different way by the date that's on it that automatically creates almost a batch number? And that would help to limit the damage. So there have to be ways around it. I'm dealing at the moment with a seafood processor who, the grower has these amazing systems which trace every time a fish burps, you know, seriously good. And then it goes to a processor who's total manual handling, and again, tub tags after they've gone to all the trouble of batch numbers and dates and, you know, the whole shooting match. And then it gets to the processor who's on such a low margin that they say, oh my God, we're going to fillet this fish and then we'll give it a batch number. Don't worry about the incoming batch. So they have exactly the same problem because of the cost.
I guess my point is, for my particular, I use my own label, so it's only me that uses that label. So if I see my label, I know it's mine. So I understand the egg, the case study of the egg, drama, and I understand that there are lots of people not like me where they're using someone else's label or a retailer label or whatever. But I guess if that's what's happening, then that should be what needs to happen, is a traceability. My understanding is even though I've got my label and my name and address on that punnet, it's still not going to be enough. I'm going to have to put, I'm going back to my farm. Isn't that enough?
Rose, can I just
Greg?
Yeah. Neil, maybe just in the presentation I'm going to give, I can just provide a bit more insight into what that actually might mean in terms of narrowing, as opposed to saying it will stop a withdrawal. But how do you more quickly, restore consumer confidence to buy again? And how can you narrow a recall or a withdrawal from 2,000 stores down to 20? And some of the solutions that we talk about in the remaining part of this session might just provide a bit of insight to you to be able to answer that question.
I was going to suggest that too. I think just for the sake of time, we might move on and let Greg give his presentation. And if Rose can stay around, she can answer some questions at the end as well.
Yep.
So if you want to go ahead and share your screen, Greg.
All right, I will try and do this. So can everybody see that?
Yeah, it just needs to be in presentation mode.
How do I do that?
So is this a power? Oh, you've got the PDF up.
Oh, have I got the PDF up? Have I?
Yeah.
Hold on. New share. Hold on. Where is that? No, that's the PDF still.
Yeah, maybe if you just unshare for a tick and close that one, perhaps. I don't know.
So I'll just.
You'd think we'd all be such experts by now, wouldn't you?
you would. Right, let me see if I can try this one. Where is the... Sorry, give me 1 second.
No, that's okay. We're good.
Angela, while we're waiting, will the presentations, the actual presentations be available or just the recording?
I don't know. We'll ask Rose and Greg that.
Is that better?
To make it available.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's is that's in Google Docs? Is that, I don't know if you can do it as a presentation from there either. Do you want me to try and do it? Oh, you can. Okay.
So is that okay?
Yeah, it's got some extra stuff there, but that's okay. Is that okay, everyone? We can see that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
All right, apologies. Okay. Thanks very much for the opportunity, Angela, and great work, Rose. Great, and appreciate your dedication to this as well. So I presented a couple of years ago, and I really don't want to spend too much time because I think everybody kind of understands the potential benefits. They understand that there's a cost involved, and they understand that it's a journey that can't be undertaken, in 1 week or a month. My view on this is, first of all, figure out what problem you're trying to solve. and then understand around even just digitizing what you're currently doing. Now, whether that's just one up and one down. So what I will start to say though is digital transformation, I think for everybody, we know it's happening in every aspect of our lives, whether that's in banking or working with the ATO or booking a flight. And the whole reason for digital transformation is, you know, in a true world, makes things easier, quicker and seamless, not having to repeat information that you populate once and then have to do it every other time you go in to book a flight, for instance. So that's the goal really of any form of digital transformation. So then the question really is, how does that relate in terms of traceability processes, and what could that mean for things like food safety, biosecurity, product provenance, or cross-border trade? What opportunities does that present? Now, I'm not going to go through these, and Rose put up half a dozen before, and not all of these benefits will drop at the same time. Not all of these will be available to everybody because it depends on how far you take your traceability journey. But my point on this is it's everything from mitigating risk to new ways to connect with customers, new ways to share stories or get unit level feedback on quality from multiple farms supplying the same brand, understanding what farm quality is performing better. And it might be that they had a higher or lower rainfall for the season, or they were using a different growing method, new ways to reduce food waste. What about updating and getting approvals for digital certificates online for, you know, irradiation or phytosanitary, and having those approved online? What about new ways to protect your brands around counterfeit? And counterfeit's not such an issue here in Australia, and berries typically are consumed locally, but over time, if that opportunity presents, you know, then that's something new. What about capturing upstream inputs? Let's say if a pesticide was recalled and we could identify that batch of product, you know, retailers at a point could actually update their point of sale to identify that particular pesticide to a batch of product and stop the sale of that product. I always get in trouble when I say this, but new ways to leverage your customers, guys. You know, one thing, and I'm an ex-retailer myself, retailers love data insights. So my view to you all is use them wisely. Make sure that you get something in return. And I think that's an opportunity in the digital age that we find ourselves. What about new ways to prove the claims you're making? Because there is a lot of greenwashing out there. So how do you verify credentials and provable claims? What I was saying to the gentleman before around rebuilding confidence, I think confidence is the key here. When that melon thing happened, it took 2 years plus for them to get back to recall volumes. And I think about the recent one in leafy greens with the spinach that was making people hallucinate. I can tell you, for me, with my family, I left it about 4 weeks before I bought any more spinach because I just wasn't sure. Now, the difference between leaving it 4 weeks and 4 months, or 4 weeks and 1 week, it's a major impact to industry. Let me just keep going down. This is just when we talk about events. Here's an example of our company, FreshChain. But so you've got the grower, the pack house, customer warehouse, the retail store, the consumer. But you could equally add upstream inputs, you know, like pesticides or herbicides or whatever else it might be. Or you could also include your transport provider. Now, I don't actually think you need to include all of these to generate value. To me, in some respects, just the grower to the consumer to be able to trace back to origin instantly is a really significant benefit for the whole supply chain. As other parties, and you'd have to have appetite from other parties who want to participate in full end-to-end traceability, there is much more value that can be extracted. But don't let that put you off. This is a starting point to say, well, look, this is what I'm doing today. What would just be the next step? And again, I think going back to Rose's point, the question really has to be, what problem are you hoping to solve? or what opportunity have you seen out there that you'd like to extract? Once you understand that, then I think you can start the journey to who should you talk to? What is it you really need to understand? And let me also say, we've worked a lot with the berry industry, the melon, leafy greens. We do a lot of work with Queensland and New South Wales, DPI and the Food Authority. We've worked with Victoria and the other state agencies. And we often get this question, because I think when people talk about undertaking a new journey, we always get asked, oh, look, Greg, will I be the first to undertake this work? Am I going to be the guinea pig? And the question for the berry industry is, nope. You're not only not going to be the first in horticulture, you're not even going to be the first in berries. And here's just some examples of the work we've done, but I know there are others out there. But, everything from wine to cherries to raspberries to basil to cut melons to potatoes to watermelons to honey to potatoes. So my reasoning here, the reason I raise that is that it's really now not a case of are you breaking new ground? It's how far back in the pack do you want to leave yourself? And I'm not doing that to try and create fear. I'm simply saying there are some opportunities out there right now with the evolution of new technology, which even 5 years ago would have made this much more difficult. There's actually some really easy implementations if you start this journey. Sorry. Can everybody hear me?
Can now. You just went quiet for a minute.
Oh, I was just saying, my point is now there is an opportunity for people with new technology that has become available even over the last 5 years to do what was much more difficult. Can everybody still hear me?
Yep, all good.
Although I do want to raise an important packaging update for everybody on this call. Now, you may or may not be aware, but within 3 years, basically, the current one-dimensional or linear barcode that anybody uses on any pack that you see in a retail store will be replaced by a 2D barcode on all consumer packaging for scanning at the point of sale and other things that your supply chain partners are going to need. That's a sunset of 2027. That's not that far away if you think about where you are today. Now, those opportunities to extract that benefit is now, but there is a 3-year timeline to set this in motion. And the reason it's 3 years is you've got to get every Woolworths, Coles, independent store, and some of those obviously are more able to update their hardware and software requirements. So, if you're supplying the whole market, in the meantime, you're going to have a minimum of that existing barcode. And if you really want to extract the benefits of the mandatory piece for that barcode, and then the consumer recall, provenance, anti-counterfeit, ESG opportunity, you're going to have to apply a second barcode, which is that 2D unique and serialized code I was talking about. What would that actually look like on your barcode? Here's a couple of examples. So there was Dawson Mellon Co., who we worked with. And you can see there's a stacked data bar and a serialized and unique QR code with something called a digital link, GS1 digital link syntax. What about the Perfection Fresh product there, raspberries? Again, you can see the one-dimensional linear numbered barcode for scanning at the point of sale. And we applied, again, a QR, serialized and unique. It has to be that for traceability. You see a lot of QR codes out in market, and typically they are not dynamic. They are static, and they are used more so to just direct to a single website, let's say for marketing. Then the question is, you might ask yourself, well, which 2D barcode should I go with if I'm going to do that? Well, it's a pretty simple thing for me. Go with the one that gives you the best of all worlds. And that one there is a QR code with a digital link URI. You might then say, well, Greg, why is that? And it's pretty simple. I won't get technical at all, and anyone can reach out post this. But rather than having to have 3 QR codes on pack, you know, one for a promotion and one for marketing and one for, you know, gamification, this one here is a single code that allows you to link to multiple data sources so that any supply chain partner can access permission-based any information that they require. So, and I've seen packs there that have a 1D barcode and then 3 QR codes on. Well, we know space on packaging is limited and it's premium. So you really want to be able to do this with a single barcode delivering all those benefits. One of the keys to deployment is using global data standards, and I won't talk any more on that because Rose really did a great job of covering that off. What I would say to you though is ensure you remain in control of your future software choices. If you partner with a solution provider who uses proprietary standards that are closed loop and cannot be read and understood by another operating system, you are in for a world of hurt. So just ask the right questions, and we are more than happy to help anybody out with that conversation. This is a slide that I put up, not this one, but the next one, that people really go, wow, I didn't realize this. And this is about showing what can a QR code with a digital link on packaging be actually used for? Well, the question is lots. Let's take a look at some of the examples of what you can share or embed in data, and you can receive insights from that code. So you look there and you think, wow, in that small 2D code, all of this stuff, absolutely. So in that code, you could either have it embedded in the code or held on the cloud, but you could have the origin at a state level, at a regional level, at a farm level, at a paddock level, at a row level, at a picker level. It's up to you guys in terms of what level you'd want to run with, more granular, less granular. You could have the identifiers embedded in the code for the harvest date and time. You know, the global trade identification number or the global location number, batch lot code, best before date, the customer number. You don't have to put all of these in, but these are the opportunities for gold standard of what the retailer in particular are going to be looking for. You could include your upstream inputs, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, all sorts of other stuff that you might want to include for your knowledge. You don't have to share any of this. This is based on who actually loads the data is the data owner. And so you get to determine who gets to see what. You might want to share X with your consumer, Y with your retailer, Z with your transport provider. It's all based on data relevancy. You then might get to see who's scanning your product, where are they scanning it, what time are they scanning it, how long between when that product was dispatched to when that was scanned. You might want to look at the day and time of dispatch or a freshness index. See if you have a transport leg that seems to be taking longer to get to a location that you thought. Now, that might not necessarily be an issue, but if a pattern starts emerging, it might give you an opportunity to reach out to your transport provider to see if that truck is stopping overnight before it lands in that destination that you thought was going a day earlier. You know, the packing process, uploading certificates for online approvals with your agents, whether it's here domestically going across borders with fruit fly, or whether it was shipping them to another country and you know, making it easier for an export agent to see a certificate, approve it online, and have that certificate flow with the movement of those goods. And I think the other really important one is consumer engagement. Out of all this, what is the minimum type of stuff you get? The scan rates, the dwell time, of how long people are actually spending in the code, how many times they're scanning that, what are they opening in the code, what do they want to learn more about? Are they opening about how to store the product? Are they opening about the Modern Slavery Act? Are they joining your socials? Find out what your consumers want to know more about, and let's get away from assuming what they'd like to know more about. What is it in the platform or the app that they're actually spending time in? You can actually do some identification of how many people are actually repurchasing that product. What about in-app complaints? So people typically complain on social media, which is really unfair and do a lot of damage without giving a brand owner the opportunity to review. Something like this allows them to make a complaint inside the code, which only then goes back to the grower to be able to reply one-on-one to a consumer and give them some confidence that you're going to follow up, give them a reply. Everyone, I think, knows the thing around provenance. Everyone knows what is achievable here, your brand, your call to action. Yes, these are Australian berries verified from this region in Coffs Harbour, for instance. You can share all sorts of things. Here's just a couple of examples, and I'm not going to talk too much around this, but proof of provenance, assurance, educate people around why 5 servings a day of vegetables and fruit is a minimum, and it's great for your long-term health. How do you store products? A lot of waste actually happens at the home. What about the goodness of fresh food? The thing I quite like about this as well, in terms of sharing sustainability initiatives and building a community of supporters, is when people actually rate your product. Everyone loves getting 5-star ratings, but for me, the gold is in the 1-star. What's happened in that product? And I know raspberries, for instance, only have a shelf life from harvest to done of, I think, 10 days or 9 days. That's assuming they're held in the proper conditions. You could very quickly lose 3 days if that's poorly handled. So if you start getting 1 stars from one of your farms, but 5 stars from another farm, what is it that's happening that one lot of product is mushy and not lasting, and another lot of product is holding up brilliantly well? You could compare and contrast varietals. Types of insights, guys, and this is just, you know, this is some examples, but you can realize your commercial benefits. You see the ratings and comments, the in-app use. You can see what days your products are mostly being purchased and scanned. There's some really great insights there, because what you want is, you don't want data in itself. Data in itself is of no use. If you can't extract the insights from that data, don't worry about collecting it beyond the need for compliance. So you need someone to help you say, hey, look, this is the data. What is it telling me? What can I learn from it? What changes can I make, or investigations I can do to make sure that we give our consumers the best eating experience? Ours is a mobile first, so we want to make sure that whether a grower is, you know, just working with their smartphone or on their laptop, you can access this in real time anywhere that you are. Feedback and ratings. I've spoken about data insights. I've spoken about data privacy and permission. Remember, just because you capture the data doesn't mean you need to share it. My view, and I say to everybody, is look, share it based on data relevancy. Ask yourself, why do they need that data? If it doesn't help make things more seamless, make things easier, make things quicker, make things more accurate, why are you sharing it? This is an interesting one here. If you go back to that and say, okay, this is what it could do, then you go to say, look, what about support to help an early investigation of a food incident, particularly unlike that gentleman who maybe said, look, I'm the only one with my label. There's a lot of brands out there that once they're decanted, you really don't know where that product has come from. If it's not a retailer brand, but if it's another global brand, you might have a dozen farms supplying that. Now, as I go back to, I think this whole thing comes around to consumer confidence. You're not going to be able to stop a withdrawal if something like this is found, but you can absolutely narrow the early investigation, these 3 farms, common factor affecting it, and start the investigation early. Because if you can nail that in a couple of weeks, yes, you might be removing stock from 30 stores, but it's a whole lot better than 3,000. So that QR code, for instance, if there were 3 packs, 2 of the same from actually 2 farms, they were decanted, you suddenly found a common factor. By scanning that QR code, you can instantly identify the origin, the pack date, and the time of pack. Now, if you know that, you're going to know who was on that line. packing it. You might be packing in the field, and there are ways to actually allocate field punnets to a picker or a packer, and certainly you can do it in line if you've got packing stations. But that QR code, just with those 3 elements, would give you such a quick starting point that we don't typically have today. Forget about doing full end-to-end and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, if you want to do that, by all means, but I say just the next step. And then what about actually tracing it down? And I won't go through this because I want to leave a few moments for questions. But you will see actually if customers start sharing their data, their inbound, outbound DC pick to store data. We did a project with that on Woolworths, and we were able to identify instantly at a punnet level where product had gone through and how many of those punnets had actually been sold at the point of sale. That's what the future is looking like, guys. So we can, safeguard our consumers, safeguard our industry, and restore confidence really quickly. And like I said, I'm not pretending this will solve everything. It won't, but it will do a lot to narrow and mitigate the risk that you might not have done anything wrong. But you know what? That brand that had the leafy green hallucinogenic product in it, I didn't buy any spinach, not just that brand. So everybody suffers. And that's why I say to the industry, is there something as a minimum you can do to take the next step? In the future, even, you'll be able to get a future personalized recall alerts sent to your smart device. Now, there's still a lot of work to be done. But even if you don't do that, if a grower knew that their batch had been affected and they had this code on, you could update that code to say, do not consume. This product is subject to a current withdrawal or recall. For further information, contact New South Wales. Now, you as the grower or brand owner could update that on this code. Irrespective of what the retailer did, this is your brand, your code. You could do this right now, right today. So then I just want to spend a couple of minutes, if I can, Angela, on is there such a thing as a low cost and easy to use digital traceability solution as a minimum at a unit level? So not linking unit level to serialized crate labels, to serialized pallet SSCC labels. We don't have to do all that. Yeah, that would be great over time, but could we even just do it at a unit level? Let's take a look. So my understanding, and I could be wrong here, is there's 3 most practical and common packing and labeling methods. One is people might pick and pack in retail units in the field. Now, I know we have some clients who actually do that, right? So they actually pick and pack in the field because they want less touch points. We then know that people are actually saying, actually, from a quality point of view, we're now moving to actually picking in bulk and packing in those units in line in a shed. And then there are those who, from an aggregator point of view, pick in bulk and ship in crates to another warehouse to be packed in a shed, again in line. So let's take a quick look at each one of these. So if you pick and pack in punnets in the field, and it's not, from a packaging point of view, it's probably the most challenging one. It is doable because we have done it, but it requires a couple of nuances that packing in line does not require. So the packing method, for instance, would be you pack these berries into a pre-printed punnet or clamshell with a serialized and unique QR code already on the artwork. And these remain dormant and silent until you activate the codes. And when you activate the codes, it automatically, even if you capture nothing else, it automatically captures the geolocation, right? GPS, it captures the date and time and weather conditions for that particular punnet of when it was being packed. Now, the solution on something like that is as simple as we apply a carton label with a 2D on it, right? It has all those coded numbers linked to that carton. You would scan and make that carton go live with a smart device. It could be a smartphone, it could be an iPad, it could be a scanner. And that then activates that entire carton for packing off on that date. And that would capture pack date, time, etc. So that's one option. Very low cost, pretty simple, although there are some challenges around maintaining, making sure that if you scan a carton on that day, you do use it on that day. Because if you leave that carton aside and you use it a week from then, you're going to be, linking incorrect information. You've got to be really careful with that. We've done it with those. So if you're disciplined, it can be done well. What about if you pack and punnets in a shed? So this is really what we call, packing inline. And this to me is my preferred option, inline on demand, live variable data flowing through. So this is where you actually have punnets that have a QR code, serialized and unique, applied inline and on demand through either a couple of scenarios. Print and apply, or you could apply it directly on film with heat seal. Or if you wanted to, this is not print and apply, but you could even have them with punnets that were pre-printed. And you would have to put a camera in that line and activate if those codes were already pre-printed. But that's a really, in my view, a really simple option to actually set that up. Now, again, I don't know what printing and labeling that growers have in their packing sheds. I don't know whether they do 2D QR codes, but we have done this now more than once, and it's an amazing piece of work. It's not actually that complicated, but it does require some change, potentially. What are the benefits of something like this? Well, you don't require any need to keep the punnets in sequence. You can actually pack any punnet at any point with your brand. There's no minimum order requirement because you're only printing those codes when you're about to pack it off. So whether that's print and apply or packing directly on a film with heat seal. So there's no excessive inventory. There's no inventory cost there that you have to hold. The other thing too is if you print inline and on demand, you can embed key data in code for access by your supply chain partners, in particular retailers who consider this to be the gold standard for the way they access their needed data at the point of sale. And then what about option 3? What if you're thinking, well, look, Greg, I'm just an aggregator. Well, pretty simple, guys. You just pack the strawberries into a bucket and a tray, and you send that off to the aggregator for packing. Now, what's the solution on this? Well, you apply a bin or a crate or a batch day label, right, that you print out with a QR code with the same information that follows the shipment to the aggregator, right? So rather than you packing them into pallets, they scan that code and they link that to the punnet labels that they are then packing off for shipment. It's a really simple process. It's actually not that difficult, and I'm happy to provide some more detail because, again, this is how we work with some of our growers. And the benefit of this one, while I would rather do it myself, if you're doing this one, you get all the benefit, but you don't have to actually do most of that work. There's limited involvement to achieve the traceability and provenance outcomes. So then I know Angela's going to put this on the website, and I'm happy to share this presentation if people want to reach out to me and provide me their details. And this is then just more specifically around FreshChain itself. And that includes everything, including our sensors, which are actually part of our solution. They don't have to be taken up, but you can see there. And then there might be some questions I said to Angela that people might kind of have that says, well, how many barcodes will I need to apply? Well, it depends what you want to achieve. If you want to just stick with the current system, then you must retain the one-dimensional barcode as a minimum, and that's going to be for the foreseeable future. If you want to extract those other benefits we mentioned, you will need some form of 2D code as a second code on your punnet. But as you saw with the examples I put up, it's absolutely doable and manageable, and it provides some real opportunities right now. Do you need to link all levels of packaging? I don't believe you do to get the benefit. Yes, it would be wonderful, but at the end of the day, to get the whole benefit of that, your customer equally has to be prepared to share their data. And are they? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Do you need all involved in the supply chain actors to get value? I don't believe you do. This would instantly identify product back to origin and allow you to share your farming history, generational stories, and get instant feedback on what people think about the quality of your product and take customer complaints offline that come back to you directly as a grower. Some top takeaways there that I mentioned. I won't go into 2D. So thank you very much for the opportunity. That is the end from me. There's my details. You're welcome to reach out. And we work with Rachel McKenzie. We work with the berry industry. And we're really, grateful for the opportunity to participate in this today with Rose. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. That was great. So if people want to get a copy of your presentation, they can send you an email?
Yeah, they're more than welcome to reach out with a phone call, or if they'd like to kind of study that in more detail, I'm happy to send that through.
Okay. I dropped out of Zoom there for a second. That gave me a panic. Thought the whole thing was going to end. Does anybody have questions? I'm sure there's lots of questions for Greg. And also Rose, if you've thought of any from Rose's presentation as well.
There is one question. Oh, no, go Helen.
Helen.
Oh, was that my question about the punnets getting at the end of the day?
Yeah. I think, Helen, there's a couple of things here, which is why I always recommend if there's an opportunity for a pack house to print inline and on demand, you won't end up with any waste at all. I think the risk for growers, unless you're really disciplined, and in saying that, growers are disciplined because that's how you apply any process, but you've got to make sure that if you scan a carton, that you've got to either maintain those punnets in sequence if you don't use all of them, which is quite difficult. And if you don't use all of them and then someone just happens to put that carton away for a month and then someone finds half a carton and says, oh, let's use those, you're then thinking that that product was packed a month earlier than it was. So that is the challenge. It's doable, it's workable, but like any process on farm, if you're going to do it properly, it needs to be really well enforced, and it needs to be part of your compliance program.
So Greg, with I thought you mentioned that with pre-printing.
Sorry, I can't hear that.
You can you hear me? It says my internet connection is unstable, so that's great since I'm the host of this.
I can hear you now.
So with pre-printed punnets and doing it in line, and you're not heat sealing, you've got the QR code already on the punnet. I think you mentioned to me that you can activate the things in line.
Yeah, that to me is the second best option, and that is that you actually pack in line with pre-printed punnets. All you then do is you establish a camera or a sensor in line, and you do that on meters per minute. So there's lots of options out there, low cost options. And as the punnets go under that camera, that activates the code, and that captures the pack location again, the pack house, the date and time. And we've done that with some clients who really like that, because it they didn't really want to move to inline on demand at that point. But they really wanted to extract the benefits, and they didn't have to then maintain punnets in sequence. So yeah. I think you're right, Angela, if you're not inline on demand, then if you are inline at all, pre-printing and just simply activating with a camera or a sensor is a really low cost, easy and smart solution.
Okay, so that would mitigate Helen's issue with the producing waste if you don't use all the punnets that you've already pre-activated.
That's right. That one there, Helen, that was specific to if you pack in the field.
Yeah. So you'd have to have some sort of system of activating out in the field.
And that's easy. That's just with a smartphone. The problem then is, Helen, is let's say there's 1,200 punnets and you only use 1,150 of them. You got to make sure that that 50 is used as a minimum the following day. And probably, if not, then they need to be discarded. And then you would end up with some minimal waste, but we really don't want to add any further waste in the supply chain.
anyone have any other questions for Greg?
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify, like you with those scanning ones, doesn't each individual punnet then have its own code?
Yep.
And then as it's going through, it puts the information, attaches information to that code, like who packed it, date,
Yep.
and all that. Yeah,
It's correct. So Helen, for us, every code is unique and serialized and encrypted. So every single code has its own code.
yeah, cool.
What we would do though, if you're talking about the carton, we create a QR code that includes every code in that carton. And that then becomes the carton label that you activate if you're doing this in the field. So it's a bit, it's doable. My view is if there's another way, if people are packing in a shed, in line, to me, there's a better management of that system, but we work with all three of these options. And we say and some of them say, look, we just want to do it this way, but we are thinking about heading to this way. And I'm saying, look, we want to make sure this is available to everybody, irrespective of what you do, and not forcing people down a path they're not ready for.
Any other questions? I had a list, but I can't find them now. Okay, so you're saying in 2027, Greg, these QR codes will be the mandatory thing that everybody has to have on the punnet to replace the 1D barcodes? Yeah,
pretty much, Angela. They're giving it enough time, they believe. They're giving it 3 years. So they're saying to people, and look, if we don't head down this path, Angela, the truth is we're going to be less competitive. It's going to take longer to do what we need to do in terms of transacting. It's going to put us behind the rest of the world, and it's going to make the sharing of data of when it's needed with supply chain partners, it's going to render us compared to our competitors and compared to what other industries are doing as well, it's going to put us on the back foot. There's no question.
Can I just ask, what are they going to require all that sort of information in that barcode? Is that like what sort of information?
Yeah, I think mostly it's going to be, Helen, it's going to be GTIN, batch lot code, maybe a best before or used by. I know that doesn't happen in berries. But it's going to be more of that to stop the sale of expired goods, to have the global trade identification number encoded. You might want to have your batch lot code, but that detail hasn't yet been sorted, but it's more so for them at the point of sale. And they do some of that now. If you look at meat, if you look at seafood, if you look at dairy, they have QR codes now, but those codes in there in the retailers, they're not able to be scanned by a consumer. They are specifically to be used to stop the sale of expired goods. That's really why they're moving to this for all product over time. And horticulture, from what I see, is certainly, almost the last bastion of trying to move this thing forward. Some industries are doing more work around this. And like I said, like what a lot of people get a bit worried around, I don't want everyone to see my data. The data that you load, apart from the retail point of sale data that will be needed from the retailers, you don't actually have to share anything else. If you don't want to share with consumers or the retailers or the transport providers, if you don't want to share harvest pack date or growing date or the time of pack or the time of harvest, you don't have to. Some people are quite nervous and they only want to show the location of where the product came from. Other people are like, no, I want people to know that this was packed only a day ago. I want them to know how fresh this is. So we're just saying to people, it's your data. It's stored locally here, protected by privacy laws. You're not obligated to show it. You determine based on how it benefits you, what data you are prepared to share.
I have another question with international trade. So you mentioned that you can also use them to have your e-certificates like phytosanitary certificates and things like that on there. Is that something that's beginning to be a thing internationally?
There's a lot of work being done around a single trade window and product conformity. And I was in Canberra not long ago, and they were talking about countries like Singapore and New Zealand, who seem to be much more advanced in that space. And we're moving to a digital world where, while it's not happening right now, they are looking to move to the space where you can share and approve those credentials or those requirements online. Now, that might also include an email follows the journey of those goods, but it means that effectively that digital certificate can be viewed and approved online with any partner for cross-border trade or export product. Now, what the next step on that, though, is they need to make sure that that is verified and it's actually coming from the issuer. So then there's that whole thing around who's actually issuing that certificate. So I'm involved in a lot of work in that space as well, but I can tell you the government, the state agencies, and the Export Council are working very hard to try and meet those rising demands, both from the US FDA with traceability, but even for things from the EU around deforestation. And how do you prove that the product you're shipping has not come from illegal logging? Or so there's more and more of this happening, and I don't want to scare people saying you got to do everything, but there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes to bring us up to speed, where I think Australia's done quite well, but if it's not careful, it will fall behind a lot of the first world countries, and that's why the work's being done.
Thanks. Has anyone got any other questions? No? Well, I just want to really thank Greg and Rose for their presentations. That was really informative, lots and lots of information. I'm glad we were able to record that because I think I need to watch it again. And yeah, I'd just like to thank you both for that. And if anybody would like, so Rose, I meant to ask you, are you happy to share a PDF of your presentation to people who registered?
Yes, that's fine. I'm not sure whether those transition slides work once you've PDF'd it. I've sent it to you in PowerPoint.
Okay.
So it may be best to leave it in PowerPoint. I'll check that with our team members, but yeah, I'm quite happy for people to have access to it.
Okay, thank you. And I can send an email out with Greg's contact details if you missed writing it down from the slide. So again, thank you so much for presenting to us, and thank you everybody who got off the farm or whatever and left their day job to come and listen. So
thanks very much, Helen. Sorry, Angela. Really
Angela.
appreciate the opportunity. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.